Hi, my name is Shraddha Bista. I'm a registered migration agent. Today I'm here to talk about parent visa, and my main focus will be on contributory parent visa. Before I start, I'd like to highlight the fact that parent visa applicants has to pass the medical examination. Now, since they are at a certain age, they might have some conditions. If not now, they might develop the condition while they're waiting for the parent visa, which can be 4.5 to 5 years if they're applying for contributory parent visas, and it could be 30 years if they're applying for a non-contributory parent visa. So my question to you is, do you want to leave your parent visa application till that very last moment when you think your parents are too old, and then you suddenly realize, I have to bring my parents over to Australia? At that time, what if they have developed some kind of condition and they can't pass the medical examination? If they can't pass the medical examination, their visa will not be granted. You might think that visitor visa is always an option, but is it practical? At that age, do you think it's easier for them to travel back and forth? Because with visitor visa, they cannot stay in Australia for more than 12 months in an 18 months period. Plus, it's not very cost effective. You have to book flights, you have to apply for another visitor visa, which is all very stressful. If you really want your parent to live in Australia permanently, especially at an old age when they need their support, then you must act now while they're healthy and most likely able to pass the medical examination. Okay, so let's look at the eligibility criteria. The main thing is you need to pass the balance of family test. How it works is the department will look at how many children, including the stepchildren, are here in Australia as an Australian citizen, permanent resident or eligible New Zealand citizen, and if you have 50% or more of your children in Australia, then you pass the balance of family test. There is an alternative way to pass the balance of family test, which a lot of the times people are unaware of, and that is if you have more children in Australia as a permanent resident citizen or eligible New Zealand citizen living in Australia than any other single country, then you still pass the balance of family test. Now let me explain that with an example. So if you have 5 children, normally you think you need to have 3 children to meet that 50-50 or more. But if you have 5 children and if 2 children are here in Australia, and if the remaining 3 children are living permanently in 3 separate countries, then you still pass the balance of family test. If you do not pass the balance of family test, there's an alternative temporary visa option which was introduced last year, known as Sponsored Parent Visa Subclass 870. It allows the parents of Australian citizen or permanent residents to live in Australia temporarily for up to a maximum of 10 years. It's not a permanent visa, and before you lodge the visa application, the sponsor first needs to get an approval to become a parent sponsor, and there are strict guidelines associated to it. The visa cost in total for 10 years is $20,000. You can choose shorter option like 5 years, which will cost you $10,000, or 3 years that will cost you $5,000. However, I personally think this visa is suited more for those people who do not meet the balance of family test. Because if you think of it, this visa will cost you $20,000 and there's insurance on top of that for the whole 10 years. It is not that cost effective. It's only a temporary visa and you cannot extend after 10 years. There are a lot of specific requirements and criteria for Subclass 870, for which I'll be making a separate video. Today's focus is mainly on permanent parent visa, and there are 2 types, contributory and non-contributory. Now, non-contributory is the cheaper option. For 1 parent, it'll cost you $6,415, and for 2 parents, it'll cost you $10,655. You might be thinking, this option is cheaper and affordable, but let me warn you, the non-contributory parent visa application time, the waiting time is 30 years. This is because Australia doesn't want people who are not going to contribute to Australian economy and be burdened on the taxpayers. Therefore, the 30-year waiting period is simply to discourage people from applying for the non-contributory parent visa. The only time I advise my clients to opt for the non-contributory parent visa if they cannot afford the contributory payment straight away is when the parents are in Australia and the visa they are holding does not have the no further stay condition attached to it, and if one of the parent is 65 years or older. That's because if you apply on show, the parents will be on bridging visa, and while they wait for the 30 years, they will be on the bridging visa and they can wait in Australia. And that brings us to the contributory parent visa. So if you can afford to pay the $47,755 for one parent, or if you're applying for two parents, it's between $92,000 to $93,000 depending on whether you're applying from onshore or offshore. So if you can afford to pay that much, then I highly recommend for you to go for the contributory parent visa. Mainly because the waiting period is only 4.5 to 5 years, and the chances of them passing the medical examination is higher. It is a permanent visa, and most importantly, they'll be on Medicare. A lot of the times I find my clients hesitant to opt for the contributory parent visa because they say that they don't have the savings straight away. But what they don't know is that you don't have to pay the money at time of application. You only pay the base application, which is about $4,000 for one parent, or it's $5,000 to $6,000 for two parents depending on whether they're onshore or offshore. Then once you make the application, you go on a queue for 4.5 to 5 years, and at time of grant, the department will then ask you to pay the remaining amount, which means you have 4.5 to 5 years to save up. If you think 4 to 5 years is not enough, you have an option of choosing the two-stage contributory parent visa, where you pay the 60% of that big chunk at 4 to 5 years, and then you'll be given 2 more years, and then only you are asked to pay the remaining 40%. But there's a catch. You end up paying about 10 grand more. Lastly, you have to also pay assurance of support. It's a deposit which is refundable to you after a certain period of time. If you go for contributory parent visa, the assurance of support is $10,000 for one parent and $14,000 for two parents, and you'll get the money back after 10 years. If you go for the non-contributory parent visa, for one parent it's $5,000 and for two parents it's $7,000, and you get the money back after 4 years. I cannot miss to give high level of importance on getting the assurance of support approved. You get the approval from Centrelink. You need to be earning a certain amount of figure to be eligible to give the assurance of support, and if this doesn't get approved, then your parents' visa application will not be approved. There are lots of high stakes when it comes to meeting the eligibility criteria for parent visa application, and you don't want to get it wrong. The information I provided you today is general information only. It's not a migration advice specific to your situation. So I highly recommend you to consult a migration agent and seek help when you're lodging a parent visa application. If you require any further information from us, please feel free to give us a call or send us an email. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next week.